Hey, how's it going, everyone? I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me as he has on every episode, but only on this side of the camera for the 87th or 3rd time.
Maybe 6.
We're going to go with, something like that.
Yeah.
Is my friend and producing partner, Chris Black.
Hey, thanks for letting me get out from behind the camera.
Welcome to this side of the camera, Chris Black.
I'm like Talmadge.
Do you ever forget what this angle of your house looks like because you don't spend enough time over here?
I didn't realize there was a mirror back there.
There actually is.
Yeah.
Hello.
We can see you, but I can see me.
You can see.
And
yeah,
you
I got to stand up a little bit. Maybe.
From the back of the camera or through the camera. Does that make any sense?
No, I see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I can see our reflection in that mirror. And the back side of the camera is reversed. Yes.
Yeah.
That might have
I'm sitting on that
every
side.
one of you, but yeah.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's a technical thing. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
It's technically technical. But if you've been following the channel, you may know that Chris is our resident Kansas City Chiefs fan. So we're going to talk a little bit about the National Football League. Thus far, there have been 9 instances in the history of the National Football League where a team has won back-to-back Super Bowls. Now, rather than keep it on saying Super Bowl 1, Super Bowl 2, Super Bowl 57, I don't know about all of you, but for me, that gets confusing in terms of what year it was and who the players were. So I'm going to mostly say what year.
Yeah.
And to clarify, so I'll start by saying this. The first team to win back-to-back, it did happen to be Super Bowls 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It was the Green Bay Packers, 1966, 1967. Now, the Super Bowl is in January or sometimes early February now.
Yeah.
So when I say 1966, I mean for the 1966 season.
Yes.
The Super Bowl was like January the following year.
Correct.
But when I say these years, it's for the year that the regular season took place.
Yeah.
Just so we can clear that all up.
Yeah, because it gets confusing.
It can get very confusing, and I can confuse people even without doing that.
Well,
and that might happen too.
Very true.
Very true. What did I mean by that? Anyway, so the first team to win back-to-back was the Green Bay Packers, 1966, 1967. Then the Miami Dolphins did it in 1972, where they had the perfect season, undefeated regular season, and went on to win the Super Bowl. Still the only team to do that. They then won another Super Bowl in 1973. Pittsburgh Steelers won 1974 and 1975. The Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, apparently not. Did it again in 1978 and 1979. The San Francisco 49ers did it in 1988, 1989. The Dallas Cowboys, 1992, 1993. The Denver Broncos, 1997, 1998. The New England Patriots, 2003 and 2004. And the Kansas City Chiefs have done it 2022 and 2023. So, yes, they are currently the reigning 2-time Super Bowl champions. No team has ever won 3 consecutive.
No.
So, I'm going to go through a little bit of a rundown of what these other 8 occurrences were and what they did in their bid in the season where they were bidding for that elusive three-peat. So the Green Bay Packers for the 1968 season, after having won back-to-back Super Bowls, finished with a 6-7-1 record. They somehow were still 3rd in their division. After that second Super Bowl, head coach Vince Lombardi did move to the general manager position, and longtime defensive coordinator Phil Bingston was promoted to head coach. Without going too much further, that sounds like it probably had something to do with the team's success.
You know, when you have one of the greatest coaches.
When the trophy's named the Lombardi Trophy.
The trophy's named after you, and you leave the sideline.
And you're still in the front office, but you're not calling the shots anymore.
You're probably going to have some drop-off, right?
It's almost impossible not to be some drop-off.
They fell, didn't they? I mean, they still got 3rd in the division, but
they had a losing record. Back-to-back defending champions.
Exactly. So, not good.
So there's that. For the 1974 season, the Miami Dolphins finished 11-3, first in the AFC East, but then lost to the Oakland Raiders in the AFC divisional round of the playoffs. For the 1976 season, the Pittsburgh Steelers finished 10-4, lost to the Oakland Raiders in the AFC Championship game. Those 1970s era Raiders weren't too bad, it sounds like.
You know, they were tough.
Yeah, well, that was the John Madden coached era.
Yeah, those guys and the Steelers were
were the hard,
they were the beasts,
physical,
in the 70s.
tough teams. Yeah. The 1980 Pittsburgh Steelers finished 9-7 and failed to make the playoffs.
That's a rough one if you don't make the playoffs.
Very hard.
Well, the Cowboys know about that, but that's a whole different segment.
That's a different story for a different time, or just for every time we feel like mentioning.
Pretty much.
Yeah. The 1990 San Francisco 49ers finished 14-2, first in the NFC West, but lost by a late fourth quarter field goal by a score of 15-13 to the eventual Super Bowl champion New York Giants.
I'm fairly certain I watched that game.
I did watch that
and
game.
I just cannot tell you if I remember it. I think I may have.
The Giants did not score a touchdown.
Yeah.
They beat them with 5 field goals,
Hey.
15-13. That's what it took, and that's what they did. So congratulations.
Hey, we know all about winning by field goals.
Oh, yes, we do. But, yeah, that one to me might have been the toughest one of all these teams to swallow. You're back-to-back champions.
Yeah.
You're 14-2.
Right.
You've got the same personnel. The coach didn't leave.
No.
You finish first in your division. You get beat by a late fourth quarter field goal. That had to be crushing.
And all the other team did was kick field goals.
Yes, that's all that you kept them out of the end zone.
They stalled out in either the red zone or just outside the red zone. And let's be honest,
still lost.
back then, your
You
kickers
weren't too much
kicking.
outside.
You weren't kicking 50-yarders.
Almost never were you
It
hitting
was
50
probably
yards.
pretty close to inside the 20, inside
Probably
that red
20
zone.
to 45 yards.
Something
Yeah.
where they stalled out, and all they had to do was kick a field goal. So
And they
that's
still,
tough. And
that's a hard one to live
If I
with.
remember correctly, they had a really good defense back then too.
The Giants or the 49ers?
49ers.
Well, yeah, both teams did.
Yeah, both teams. You
Lawrence
don't get
Taylor,
there.
and then you have Ronnie Lott.
You don't get there if you're not good.
Right. You don't get your defense has to be good. But yeah, both teams have very good offenses, very good defenses. Yes, I remember watching that game, and the 49ers were my favorite team at that time, and I was just like, how? Like, I knew the Giants were good, but I still was like, are you serious? Kept them out of the end zone, and I was stunned. I really was. I was like, something's possible, but then I was just like, no, they're going to be.
That's all right.
We're going to be.
Every 49er fan was stunned at the same time.
Yeah, you had to be, because again, 14-2, we weren't having a bad season. It's like they're going to. Of course they're going to win. They won the Super Bowl 55-10 last year.
Yeah.
Now they're 14-2. Of course, who's going to beat them?
Yeah.
Well, New York answered that question in the
pretty
NFC
much.
Championship game. For the 1994 season, the Dallas Cowboys finished 12-4, still very good. Lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the San Francisco 49ers, in the NFC Championship game. That was Steve Young's first Super Bowl victory.
Yep.
Head coach Jimmy Johnson had resigned head coach prior to that season and was replaced by Barry Switzer. So there's the major change there for Dallas. It wasn't the on-field personnel, but it was the head coach. And unlike Lombardi, he didn't even move the front office. He was out of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation there, I mean, I for those that don't know, I grew up a Cowboys fan, but I've switched allegiances due to some of the ownership.
Some of the organizational
decisions over the last 10 years just drove me away from being a fan. But if I remember correctly, through that time period, look, Barry Switzer is not a bad coach. I mean, he was a great college coach.
Great
he was a great college
That's
coach.
Why
He was a player's coach. He just let the players do what the players do. But Jimmy was the one that held their butts to the fire, and he no longer was there. I think their discipline lacked, obviously, and it didn't help. If I remember correctly, wasn't it that the Slop Bowl? Wasn't that raining, or was that the year later when Dallas won that? I thought that was they played in Candlestick.
I don't remember
both years.
Yeah.
And the one they lost was the one that it was the candle dunk.
It might have been that same year, because I watched it and I was trying to remember which year that was.
And I can't remember. I think it was that year that they lost. So
because
that
Dallas
doesn't help.
knocked the 49ers out of the playoffs one year. Then the 49ers knocked them out and won the Super Bowl. Then Dallas knocked them out the next year. It was like the NFC title game was like
was
one
all
of those
them.
two teams every year that went on to win the
But
Super
I think
Bowl.
that's the really bad weather, and then that didn't help them at all. But I think their overarching situation there, the thing that didn't help was they lost Jimmy Johnson.
That's the biggest factor because they were still 12-4.
Yeah.
They had a good season.
Obviously, Barry did something, right?
He was, to your point, we're not saying he was not a good coach.
Yeah.
But that's a major change, and that's the biggest thing I can point to because there wasn't a slew of injuries. There wasn't Aikman and Emmett and Novacek and Irving retiring.
Yeah.
They had the same stars, the same core. Their offensive line, which was the best offensive line in the league and one of the best offensive lines ever in the league.
Yes.
They were still intact. So, yeah, the big move was the Jimmy Johnson departure.
Yep.
All right. And then for the 1999 season, the Denver Broncos finished 6-10 and failed to make the playoffs. Huge change there was after the second Super Bowl, John Elway did retire.
So here's a good question for you.
Okay.
Do you realize who took over the reins of that team at quarterback from Elway? And when you mention the name, you'll
This
go,
may not
this
be,
is exactly why they went, whatever you said, 6-10.
This guy may not have started all year, but if I remember correctly, Bob Greasy's son, Brian Greasy, started.
Was the quarterback.
Is that who you're thinking
Brian
of?
Greasy
I
was the
know he
quarterback.
started some of that year.
Yeah, he was the quarterback after Elway. And
Okay. I knew he
look,
was.
hey, Greasy, sorry, I don't mean to bag on you, but you are not John Elway.
Well, yeah,
We saw John Elway. You're
First
not
of all,
John Elway.
who's going to replace John Elway?
Yeah.
But here's an interesting trivia for you. Brian Greasy's dad, Bob Greasy, was the Dolphins quarterback for their undefeated season.
Yeah.
And back-to-back Super Bowls.
True, yeah.
Brian was then a backup quarterback on the roster when Denver had back-to-back Super Bowls.
True. Well, that's kind of a neat
That's a pretty
neat
interesting little tidbit. Also, completely separate issue. I, in my early 20s, was good personal friends with Brian Greasy. A different Brian Greasy. But here's the interesting thing. Bob Greasy has a brother named Bill Greasy that still, I believe, lives over in Indiana. I think Santa Claus, Indiana is the name of the city.
Okay.
Bill Greasy's son, both of them named their sons Brian. Bob and his family lived in Florida. Bill and his family lived in Indiana. So the two cousins didn't see each other a whole lot, but both of them had a son named Brian. I met and became good friends with the Brian because I lived in Kentucky at the time. We were good friends and actually were roommates for a year. And the first thing I said to him, because the Brian Greasy that went on the NFL was a freshman backup quarterback at the University of Michigan at the time. I jokingly said to the guy, the Brian Greasy that I became good friends with one day, I said, "So is Bob Greasy your uncle?" Because I knew Bob Greasy had played high school football in Evansville, Indiana. So I was like, they could be related. He looked at me real serious and said, "Yeah." And then I just stared at him a little bit, and then I busted out laughing. I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "So wait, that means you have a cousin also named Brian Greasy?" He said, "Yeah." And I was like, because that's why I asked him. I was like, the irony of them, but it turns out that actually is the case.
That's funny.
So, yeah, didn't know we were going to be talking about Brian Greasy so much on this episode.
Well, neither did Brian Greasy.
And then the 2005 season, the New England Patriots, after winning back-to-back Super Bowls, finished 10-6. First in the AFC East, but lost in the divisional round of the playoffs to the aforementioned Denver Broncos. The releasing of cornerback Ty Law during the previous offseason, as well as linebacker Teddy Bruschi suffering a stroke, safety Rodney Hampton suffering a season-ending injury, were major contributing factors to the Patriots' lack of success. In fact, for that season, they started 45 different players on defense throughout the course of the season.
Well, it's how do you have consistency across the board?
Exactly. There's no continuity with your defense. It's amazing they finished 10-6.
And they had a great defense prior to that.
Right before this happened, their
like
defense
you said,
was...
Ty Law's gone, Brewski's gone,
Rodney
Hampton's
Hampton.
gone.
How do you replace all
How do you
three of them?
replace that? Yeah.
So
they just didn't have the depth.
That derailed as it would derail any team.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no team out there that you got a shutdown corner, one of the best linebackers, and one of the best safeties in the league suddenly aren't part of your team anymore.
Yeah,
How do you sustain that? If they had somehow won, my goodness.
Yeah,
what would it have taken?
Talk about running the gauntlet, right?
Yeah, exactly. So those are the other 8 instances. So currently, as we mentioned, Kansas City is the back-to-back defending champions. So Chris Black, as our resident Kansas City Chiefs fan, how realistic do you believe it is that Kansas City will do what no other team in history has ever done and win a third consecutive Super Bowl?
Well, I'm a bit of a pessimistic. I'll be honest with you. I don't. I'm just not an optimist when it comes to this. In pretty much anything. I mean, look, I'll boast about it. What my boys can do. But look, let's be honest. In the NFL, any team can beat any other team in any given Sunday.
We see it every year.
We saw the Washington Redskins beat the Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals.
And Burrow and Chase both had really good games. It's not like they struggled. They played really good, and Jaden Daniels played a 7-year seasoned vet in his third career start.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe the Carolina Panthers beat the Raiders. Who just beat
the Ravens. Yeah, so put that in perspective. The Raiders just knocked out the Ravens in a close game.
Yeah.
The very next week, Carolina with a 36-year-old Andy Dalton comes in, and Carolina beats the Raiders.
Yeah.
So any given Sunday.
So my point is we've got to run that gauntlet no matter what. Now here's the thing: they have the 10th easiest schedule, so that's very helpful.
Will help.
Okay, that does help. All right, so you're playing lesser opponents, so that's great.
But what does that mean going into the playoffs? Like, I know, but if you have the strength of schedule that's easier, how does that help you?
It helps you because if you're marching through those teams as you should, as the 2-time defending champion, and you've got Mahomes at your quarterback and Kelsey at tight end and Pacheco, who unfortunately we'll talk about that in a minute, but you've got the weapons that they have,
right?
And the receiving core is better than what they had last year, which. Let's be honest, they really struggled to catch a ball.
That was their biggest weakness.
Yeah, was a receiver, and they still won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, if you're marching through those teams that you should be beating anyways,
right,
it sets you up for a first-round bye and having the playoffs at home. Having home field advantage.
Yes.
You can't imagine what it means to sleep in your own bed.
Throughout the duration of the playoffs.
Through the entire playoffs.
And then other teams getting on
and
planes.
They have to get on planes and fly in.
Hotels.
Yes. You've got your fans who are rooting for you.
Yes.
And there are teams that, their fans travel.
Yeah.
Especially
Pittsburgh that time of year when the stakes are that high. Oh, yeah. Pittsburgh.
Steeler fans travel. Now, they're doing pretty good right now. They're not that bad. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if they're going to be there, and I don't expect them to be. But my point is they have fans that travel, and there are other teams like Green Bay fans travel.
They're good about it.
So my point is even though these other teams that are going to come in and they're going to have fans in the stadium, it is a huge deal.
You're still at Arrowhead. At home, you've got your home. You got fanatics.
Home cooking.
Playoffs.
Home cooking, as they say, right?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
huge deal. Having the 10th, I'd like to take the first easiest schedule. Be number one,
right.
The easiest schedle. But
of 32 teams, when you're 10th easiest, that's
10th easiest is still a big deal.
Right.
It's still a huge deal.
Okay.
Now here's one of the things that I got to looking at. So I got to thinking about. All right, we got Mahomes, we got Kelsey, we got Pacheco.
Okay.
All right, now let's step back there on Pacheco. I know he broke his lower leg. He's out for, I do believe I got it here somewhere, next 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks, yeah.
6 to 8 weeks. So look,
that's unfortunate.
It is what it is. But hey, we got Carson Steele, and it is a undrafted rookie. And you know what? He runs just as hard.
He looks like a pretty darn good football player so far.
Yeah, for being a rookie.
Rookie that was undrafted that nobody else had the foresight to grab up.
Look, I'm not saying that he's going to run for 2,000 yards. He doesn't have to run for 2,000 yards.
I'll be a little surprised if he does that.
I would be too. I would be greatly surprised. But let's be honest. He just needs to do enough to help move the chains.
If he can help sustain that ground game
enough. He doesn't need him and Samaje Perine, and now they got Kareem Hunt now has been elevated to the 53-man roster.
And even if Carson Steele's the best of those three, when you put those three together, if they can sustain that ground attack.
Exactly. It's just enough to help move.
That's what they need to do, yeah.
You've got the receiving core. You got Kelsey. Look, if you got Mahomes, you're in any game. I don't care. If you're down by a touchdown with 13 seconds. We all know what happened to that, and that is Josh Allen's worst nightmare. That he wakes up in a sweat in the middle of the night, and I say that, and I still have him as my fantasy
yes,
quarterback. But anyways, you just got to keep moving. And I think Pacheco,
the ball,
what they have now. So anyways, I did some looking in. So I was like, let's take a look at these three guys.
Okay.
All right, these triplets. And that all got thrown out there with the Cowboys
Dallas,
in the early 90s with Aikman, Irving, and Smith. So let's take a look. Okay, we're not going to compare them to the triplets of the past. Okay, we're not looking at, the Smith, Irving, and Aikman. We're not looking at Brady and Randy Moss, and I don't remember who the running back for them was.
But they always had good weapons.
But my point is, I'm looking right now in 2024, who are the triplets for now? So looking at it, and the NFL.com had an article just like that. It's like, great, let's see if these guys are smart and intelligent.
What did you discover?
They're not. They took Kansas City third in that list.
The third best trio in the NFL currently is what they.
Yeah, and they didn't look at the stats.
Okay.
They didn't look at the stats at all. Now let's be honest. When you have triplets, it doesn't necessarily matter as much through the season. And let's step back a second on that. Yes, you got to win the games.
Let's say it matters because you
got to win
the
games. But let's just be honest. If you got the triplets and you're playing the way you're supposed to play,
right?
Especially these three teams, they're going to be in the playoffs.
Well, because there's the matter of you have to be good enough to get the playoffs, but then once you get there, is your goal to get knocked out in the first round? Is your goal to win? We're talking about winning the third Super Bowl.
Right? Are you trying to be the Dallas Cowboys and lose in the first round? Hopefully. Thank you, Jerry. You jerk. But what they didn't, and what I think they did, I looked at the stats in the playoffs. Just what I looked. I took their stats for all three guys. Or at least the receivers. I didn't look at the quarterbacks because I'm going to be completely honest. Out of those three quarterbacks, I would just like to ask who is going to pick Brock Purdy and who's picking Jalen Hurts. Let me back up and say who they were.
Okay.
They have number one, San Francisco. Purdy.
The best trio.
The best trio.
Okay.
Purdy, McCaffrey, Ayuk. Okay. All right. The second one is Philly with Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and A.J. Brown.
A formidable trio. Okay.
And all three are both are good. I mean, I'm not saying here that they're right. Horrible.
Nobody's saying that they aren't good.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Now we've got Mahomes, Kelsey, and Pacheco.
Okay.
Now I'll step back we'll go to the running backs first real quick. I am not advocating that Pacheco is better than McCaffrey and Barkley. He's now into his third year.
Yeah.
No. It's obviously McCaffrey, Barkley, Pacheco.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
No, I mean, I think if you are arguing that and disagreeing with that, you probably shouldn't look at any kind of.
You probably shouldn't be having the conversation.
You shouldn't have that conversation.
Yeah. Pacheco, like you said, he's just in his third season. He just got injured. We don't quite know what he's going to become. Based on what we've seen so far, he's a darn good NFL running back. Yeah. But yes, currently he's number 3 of those three.
Absolutely. McCaffrey's McCaffrey. He's top of the list.
He doesn't have an equal right now.
Absolutely.
He's currently injured too, but when he's healthy in the current landscape of the game, I don't think he has an equal.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. But here's where things go off the rails, in my opinion.
Okay.
One, you got to be crazy if you're going to take Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts over Patrick Mahomes.
So did NFL.com have
They didn't break it
quarterbacks
down.
Ranked to break
No,
down?
they
just
didn't.
had the trios.
They didn't. They just had the trios, and
But you're just analyzing piece by piece.
And I'm analyzing piece by piece.
Okay.
Because I'm analyzing it and then putting in the kind of what happened in the playoffs. I didn't pull anything from a quarterback perspective, just for the simple reason is Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts don't know how to win close games in the playoffs. They just don't.
Well,
and they haven't.
I would say they don't know how to win in the Super. They haven't won a Super Bowl yet. Has
but
Purdy
not,
won some close games in the playoffs? I'd have to go back and look.
I'd have to
Has
look at that,
Jalen
but
Hurts, they maybe have. But your point of they
my
haven't won a
point
Super
is
Bowl.
Mahomes is the one that knows how to win a game.
He's won 3 Super Bowls, and he has beaten each of those 2 guys head-to-head in a Super Bowl
Absolutely.
already.
Now, some people can get like, well, they got lucky and got some penalties. And look, you can say that we pay the refs, whatever, Look, you can call a penalty on every play.
You can call
that in the
holding on
game.
pretty much every play.
Every play.
Pass
You can call pass interference.
yeah.
You could pass interference.
Right.
Pass interference.
Exactly. Oh, my face mask is almost touched.
Yeah, it's like illegal face to the hands when you did this.
Unnecessary roughness on every play.
Look, it is what it is. Did we pay them? Whatever. You can call that. Every Bills fan, every Ravens fan, and every 49ers fan will complain and cry. That's just them. That's just what's going to happen. And we would cry too if the same thing happened. But I'm just saying there cannot be any discussion.
The reality is
Mahomes is heads, tails, and 2 legs above those 2 quarterbacks.
Well,
All
Brock
right.
Purdy has only,
and he's
just
only
like
been,
we said
2
about
years?
Pacheco.
Yeah,
This is Purdy's second year as a starter. He took over midway through as a rookie from Jimmy Garoppolo. Last year was his first season, so
This is really his only second full year.
He hasn't done it.
So we don't know where he is going to rank.
In Mahomes' category,
I don't think he'll end up being Mahomes or even Brady and Mahomes. I mean, obviously, we know that at some point in time there may be quite the possibility that we're talking Brady and Mahomes as the best quarterbacks. Where now it's Tom Brady, and we're not going to argue about that.
Yeah,
but I don't think Brock is going to be anywhere near that. I don't think so.
Time will tell, but we don't see that yet.
Time will tell. But anyways, so now we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, and we looked at triplets. Okay, so
running back.
Running back, we went McCaffrey. Quarterback, we went Mahomes. Right now, Philly is in dead last. Okay, in my opinion. All right, now here's the kicker. All right. Well, here's the receiver.
Talk about kickers?
Here's the receiver. And the kicker with the receiver.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, and I asked you this question the other day.
Yes.
Who would you take? Ayuk, Brown, or Kelsey?
My honest answer, but we had 2 different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, we had 2 different ways of looking at
this. My honest answer was right now.
Yeah.
At the stage each of those guys are.
And we're not talking injury-wise. We're not talking about what they're all right now. We're just talking
Brown's
about
got a hamstring. But current NFL, if they're all healthy, where they are at this stage of their careers, I would take, if I were just picking for my team, I would take A.J. Brown. I think he's the most physically gifted and the most effective. But you presented a different perspective to me, which I really appreciated. So when I told you I would actually, truthfully, go A.J. Brown, your response to that was...
You're smoking crack. No, not really.
No,
to each his own. We all have our own opinion, right? Whether you're smoking crack like every Cowboy fan and on the face of the earth is right now. We're going to the Super Bowl. No, you're not.
They can buy tickets like anybody else can.
Barely beat the Giants, who are the worst in the division. But anyways, enough bagging on the Cowboys and their fans.
Maybe not enough.
We'll do that later. That's a whole other segment. If you haven't caught it, we're not Cowboys fans. Anyways, okay, I went with Kelsey actually, not because he's my tight end. No, it's not because he's my boy.
Okay.
I chose him because I feel he's a bigger threat within the red zone. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you get inside that red zone, what does it do? It decreases the field. Yeah. It compacts it. It's very difficult to get a receiver. Half the time when you see a lot of the receivers that get to touchdowns, either one, it's a jump ball in the corner, or it's a scramble drill, and the defense loses them, right?
Right.
But with a tight end, 9 times out of 10, it's a quick like that, right?
Well, there's a reason some guys are called, this guy's a good red zone target.
True.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
And I think that's Kelsey. And it helps.
He is.
And a lot of people may not realize this. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot more intelligent people that know players and their history. Maybe. And I don't mean they're not intelligent, but they're just not being informed about. But Kelsey was actually a quarterback at Cincinnati.
Yes, he was.
So being a quarterback and switching to a tight end, that gives you a very unique knowledge and understanding of, they've got this leverage on me. I'm going now. Most receivers are going to know that.
Yeah.
They're going to understand, I've got inside leverage, I'm cutting out. or they've got outside leverage, I'm going inside.
Yes.
But what makes Kelsey so difficult to cover is that he knows Patrick's scrambling because something's broken down. The defense has gotten through. He knows where to go and I think that's because he was a quarterback.
You could argue that he understands what the quarterback's thinking better than any other tight end or maybe receiver because of
that. So
at the Cincinnati Bearcats, he played
and that's why. And it also helps that he happens to be like this with the quarterback with Mahomes.
That doesn't hurt.
That doesn't hurt at all. I think also is the fact that it just kind of all goes why I chose him. And I just pulled some stats. So I was looking at it, and I went out and I found this is off of statmuse.com. Now, so I got all three guys, and I looked at their playoff
receivers.
stats. All three guys, Brown, Ayuk, and Kelsey.
And we're talking playoff stats.
Playoffs only.
Okay.
So let me give you this here. Where are we at? Okay, Ayuk. He played in, where are you at here, Ayuk? You played in the playoffs. He's played 9 games in 21, 22, and 23. So he went there all 3 years. He's played in 3 games every year. Okay? Now, in those 9 playoff games, 0 games with 100 yards.
Really? Brandon Ayuk in 9 playoff games.
Not 100-yard game. In fact, he averaged less than 50 yards a game in only 1 TD.
So he averaged less than 50 for the course of those 9 games. The only grace I'll give him, but this still isn't going to hold up, they do have so many weapons, he doesn't necessarily have to average 100.
Valid.
But when you average less than 50 in 9 games, you think at some point in those 9 games, he is going to be their big. Kittle and Debo and McCaffrey aren't going to necessarily carry you every time. Ayuk's a good enough receiver. You would think at some point he's going to have 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns in the game.
But the point here
that's actually pretty surprising.
But here's the thing. We're talking about triplets. So why would you put Ayuk in there if the stats aren't proven within
why
the playoffs?
Why is Debo Samuel not in the conversation?
Why is not Samuel in? Why isn't Kittle in there?
Well, that's an interesting question too.
So look, I get what they were trying to do, but I think they kind of missed the boat on this.
That is interesting that they could have chosen any of those 3 guys.
And they chose Ayuk.
If this is Ayuk's playoff stats, that they went with him.
Yeah, and I didn't think that was all that big of a deal. All right, now let's take a look at Brown.
Okay.
All right, so Brown had been in the playoffs a few more times. Been 4 times. He was in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Okay. Now, he, in those 8 playoff games during that time period.
So he averaged 2 per year.
Actually, no.
Per year.
Actually, and I will give you, I have those, it's not that browser. Where are you at? There we go. Where are you at? Mr. Brown. He actually played 3 playoff games in 19, 1 in 20, 1 in 21, then 3 with Philly in 22.
Okay.
So he had 1 game. He only had 1 game over 100 yards. And that was in 21 where he was, and that was the one
Titans.
game. 1 game with the Titans. He was 5 for 9 with 142 yards and a touch. So that's not bad, but it's 1 game.
But it's 1 game out of 8, and when you're an elite receiver, and he was an elite receiver with the Titans. It's not like he became to Philly and then became the number 1 receiver. He was the best receiver in Tennessee as well.
Absolutely.
So you think he's going to be the one getting fed the ball. Now, granted, Derrick Henry was putting up pretty big numbers at the time, so maybe a lot of that was because they were on the ground more.
And they could have, he could have got the ball more inside the 20, within the red zone.
Right.
And he was just a long threat, but still.
But why didn't he have more 100-yard games?
Exactly.
So I can go to that too.
That's my point is he didn't have but only 1 game over 100 yards. Okay. He averaged, and then looking at all the other games, he averaged less than 85 yards. Now, it was a big fluctuation. There was like 1 game where he averaged 40, 45, and 1 at like 60, and then he had like 1 at like,
I think it was 142 yards that we just looked at.
Well, and then that was that game. But the other games,
Wow.
were less than 85. Closer, better than Ayuk's,
Yeah.
less than 50.
Okay.
But not quite there at
Right.
100 yards other than the one game, which so really surprised me. I'll be honest with you.
That is.
I like
if you
A.J.
would have
Brown.
asked me, I would have said, no, he probably gets close to 100 in most of their playoffs.
I would agree.
Without looking, that would have
I would have guessed either 100 or at least 95 or higher.
90 to 105 at least,
Yeah.
probably every game is what I would have assumed
Right.
once you get in the playoffs.
At least
Okay.
averaging 2 touchdowns. Or at least one a game.
At least one a game, I would say.
You would
yeah.
think, but
And some multiple touchdown games.
right.
I would have
And the
thought.
fact that he, now he ended up with 3 touchdowns.
that one touchdown was during that was the 21 season where he had just the one game. They only played the one game, and so he had 142 touches and 42 yards and one tutty. He had one tutty in 2020. So they were obviously knocked out of the playoffs there.
That was his only game. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, with Philly in 22, he played 3 games. He had only a single touchdown. He is right here.
Am I looking at this right? It looks like in 2022. Okay, he had 3 games, a total of 146
total
yards.
146 yards.
Okay, I thought that was
So
a
we
game
break.
by game breakdown.
Yeah,
Never mind.
It gets really confusing.
Okay.
You don't if you're not careful.
Looking closely.
Yeah,
enough,
and that's where you've got to be very careful about what you're looking at.
So he had 146, but that was broken up over 3 games. So that's
Yeah.
less than 50 a game right there.
So he had, and we'll just look at it. The divisional round, he was 3 of 6 for 22 yards and no touches, no TDs. And then the NFC Championship game, where they won 31-7, which I do believe that was when Brock Purdy got hurt.
That sounds right.
I think he got hurt real early on, and then they were pretty
Then
much
they just
hosed.
kinda-
And I think the backup came in and got hurt, so they were like on their 3rd quarterback.
That might have been.
I mean, they maybe even brought in tight end to play quarterback for all. I know.
well, too bad they didn't have Travis Kelce.
If they had Kelsey, they would have been all right.
They might have just run some option.
George is like going, man, what are you doing?
They're quiet.
You're bagging on
I'm not
me.
lining up here.
Yeah, hey, maybe Kittle could have played quarterback. He was 4 of 8 in that game for 28 yards, and again, no TD.
Wow, 7 yards per catch.
Yeah, and they won
28 yards.
31-7. So you would think,
The only grace I'll give him is maybe they just didn't need to throw the ball once they were up by that amount, but that's still pretty. That's very low
you would
productivity
think-
for one of the best receivers in the
exactly
league.
28 yards.
Yeah,
And you had Jalen Hurts as your quarterback.
yeah.
Are you telling
that's
me?
hard to
Are you telling me that you pushed the whole freaking game?
right every play.
Yeah. Look, I know they like it, but that's ridiculous.
And not when it's 1st and 10 at the 50.
Right. Now, his best game was in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, in which they unfortunately lost, thank goodness.
I'd say,
'cause
was it
that
unfortunate for you?
It was great for us, but I was just saying from his perspective, it was
Okay.
unfortunate. Unfortunate for any of these Philly fans. But anyways, he was 6 of 8 for 96 yards and a TD. So he really put
That's
his
a pretty
stamp.
good game.
And I remember that game because he actually caught that on Trent McDuffie, if I remember correctly. McDuffie tripped. Now, I'm not saying that it was an easy check. He tripped. It was he actually lost him, if I remember correctly. He lost him and turned and fell.
Gotcha.
It doesn't matter. He ran a hell of a route, if I remember correctly, anyways, and he made a great catch. So, but again, not 100 yards.
Close, but officially
Not 100
yeah.
yards. And Kansas City's defense wasn't spectacular. They were great in 23.
Yes.
They were getting better in 22, but they weren't there in
weren't at that
23.
level,
They weren't at the level as they were in 23. So that's why both guys in the playoffs, they're great through the season. They kind of disappeared in the playoffs. But also understand, it's one game.
Yeah.
You have one game to win.
If you
And
don't
you
win
keep
the one
playing.
game,
If you don't
come
win,
back.
you don't come back.
Right.
So
now, what about Kelsey's?
let's
playoff
go to
numbers
Kelsey.
to compare to those.
So let's talk
guys?
about Kelsey. All right. So he played 22 playoff games. So that's quite a bit. So let's
quite a bit more than.
So let's dial back all
So is
those
that for
years.
his career?
That's so
22?
far in
Okay.
his career. Yes, so far in his career in the playoffs, he has 22 games in the playoffs.
Okay.
So we're gonna take out. So I further decided to break that down to the years that O played and the years that
Okay.
Brown was in.
That's a fair comparison.
I felt like let's take and compare them because it's not fair that we take everything else that he's done before these guys
Right.
were in the playoffs, right? Let's try to be
We're
this.
talking about where they are now.
Let's try to
look at the
talk
last
about
few
apples
years.
to apples here,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So let's just look with Brown 2019, 22 or 21, 22, and 23, 12 games, 14 touchdowns, and in 2020 he averaged 120 yards a game per game.
In 2020.
In 2020.
Okay. That's not bad.
Not bad. Not bad. If you're getting that kind of production out of a guy, that's not bad. Now, so that's during that time period. In 21, 22, and 23, so this is comparing it with Ayuk.
Okay.
He ends up with 10 games, 10 touchdowns. He averaged less than 100 yards. So I don't remember.
Slightly less.
You know what? I'd have to look. I can look back at it.
But he
I've
averaged a
got
touchdown per game, it sounds like.
Yeah,
So,
I've got that. Let's see. Get off of there. That was 20. What did we say? 22.
I think so, yeah.
And this is actually a really cool site. So
I was about to
statmuse.com, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at what you're seeing. It is actually a pretty useful site.
So, except for they got these stupid little videos that keep popping up and getting in the middle of everything. So, divisional round, he was 14 to 17 for 98 yards and 2 touches. Okay. In the AFC Championship game, he was 7 of 8, 78 yards and a TD. In the Super Bowl, he was 6 of 6 for 81 yards and a touch. Now, that's a good question is, so there we said in 21, 22, and 23, he had 10 touchdowns out of 10 games. He had 4 right there.
Right.
In 3 games.
And, yeah.
So...
And 78 yards or better each game.
Well, yeah, exactly. And 78, 81, and 98.
Right. So
if you're getting that out of your touch,
but still,
it was under 100.
When you're doing that and scoring touchdowns.
But again, you take a look at that, and that's better than Brown, and that's better than Ayuk.
It is.
So that's, I was a little shocked by that. I really honestly felt like AJ Brown would probably be better. I'm not a fan of Ayuk. Sorry, Ayuk. But I don't think you're Travis Kelce's
well, and when you ask
quality,
me the question,
and it's a totally different position. But as far as we're talking triplets here, the NFL.com is the one that put this stuff out there. Right. They're the ones that said these guys,
and they ranked them. Where
and I'm the one that said it's Mahomes, Kelce, Pacheco.
Right.
Only, most of the time it's a quarterback, receiver. In this situation, he's a tight end, but let's be honest, he's the best receiver for years. So I was the one that put Kansas City up there, and they're the ones that said, okay, yeah, these 3, and they're third. And so that's why I felt like Mahomes is the best quarterback. Your best receiver is actually going to be Kelce because of the production. Now, they may outrank him and do better stat-wise throughout the season.
See, that's where when you asked me the question, I was just thinking, if we're looking as a whole, I would take AJ Brown.
Yeah.
But then when you said, look what they've done just in the playoffs, and the subject for the episode is, are they going to repeat? Then he has to be big in the playoffs. So to that, your point is very valid.
Yeah. So, and then that's why I think in the playoffs, out of these 3 guys, for these 3 teams, it's actually Mahomes, Kelce, and Pacheco. And like I said, Pacheco, you can take him out. So we win 2 out of the 3 positions is what I looked at. Okay. So with that being said, I said at first they had the 10th easiest schedule. You've got Mahomes and you got Kelce. Hopefully Pacheco's back.
Hopefully he'll be back and at 100% by
hopefully he'll be back, and hopefully you'll have Carson Steele still running the ball too. So that's a 2-headed monster coming in and out. So that makes life. I mean, you be a defense and you try to stop Pacheco, which you can, but he's going to come hit you hard. But he runs angry at the ground.
It's not going to be without sufficient effort.
And then you get Carson Steele come in for a couple plays just to spell him and let him get a little rest.
Like you said, he runs just as
aggressively. And he looks to hit you, and he hits you hard.
He's bigger than Pacheco too, isn't he?
I believe so.
I think I'd have to look at their exact size, but I think he's a little
just
bit
look at
bigger.
him side by side and say there's probably about a 10 or 15 pound difference.
That seems
it's kind of what it looks like. Okay, so the other thing is Chris Jones.
Oh yeah.
If you're an offensive line and you're the offensive, you're the OC, you have to account for where Chris Jones is.
Yeah.
Okay. Most D tackles, Aaron Donald, where did he play? D tackle.
He played defensive tackle.
Did he play end? I don't remember him playing in. I think he just played D tackle, right?
He rushed the passer so much that sometimes he seemed like a defensive end, but I think he was strictly defensive tackle.
Chris Jones lines up across the board. It doesn't matter. He's not just a D tackle. He plays DN too. That's because they're looking for the weak link, and
So wherever the best
Spagnola.
matchup is, he's gonna line
Spagnola
up.
is going to find the weak link,
Okay.
and he's going to move him there. And then, of course, there's all scheming stuff in here. I'm not going to get into that because Spags is Spags, and in Spags we trust, as they say. But he schemes some things where he comes off and he gets the double team. Well, that frees up Nick Bolton to come right up the middle, or Leo Chenal and Tranquil,
Chris
Drew
Jones
Tranquil.
wreaks so much havoc. He's gonna draw some double teams.
Absolutely.
You don't double team him. Sometimes you risk getting sacked or getting at least having to throw it too early. You do double team him, and then what you just said can happen.
And Kansas City's defensive line is really good about blocking passes. They're just getting a hand in the air and getting it in the quarterback's face, whether it's causing him to look, alter
his vision.
alter his arm angle or something. But they are very good about batting balls down.
Yeah.
It was something they talked about, I think about a year ago or 2 years ago, talking about where they're one of the best teams at getting their hands up and batting balls down. So from a defensive perspective, Chris Jones has to be accounted for.
Oh yeah.
And if you're always throwing a double team at him, or always having to have a tight end or a running back
Somebody
chip
else to
him,
stay in to-
it has to chip him, it takes away your effectiveness as an offensive team, because you've got to account for this guy with more than one dude, because he's going to find your weak link. And by the
If
time
you don't, you're gonna be sorry.
when
that you
you're
didn't.
in the playoffs, let's be honest, this is a game of attrition. We all get injuries. I can't tell you how many times Kansas City, when they played the Bucks, and the Bucks, Tom won his last game, Super Bowl. Well, I'm not going to say that they only won it because of this, but one of the reasons that Kansas City didn't do well is they had an offensive line that was like a screen door in a submarine. It let everything in. And not to say anything about that team, because they had a great defensive team and a great defensive line.
Right.
But you got to be able to get in the way of somebody, and they didn't get in the way of anybody.
Right. It helps to slow people down.
And they didn't do
bit,
that.
yeah.
He was running for his life the whole game. But my point is if you have one guy that can put that much pressure, that makes it easy for guys like George Karlaftis. That makes it easy. Charles Amenahu, who I don't think he's back yet. He was the one that messed up his knee.
I think he's still out.
in the Bengals game, in the AFC
Bengals
Championship game. He's still out, I think. But there's a rookie, and doggone, I can't remember his name. He's out of K-State, got drafted last year late in the draft. I can't remember his name.
So
Young
he's in
man,
his second year now.
Yeah, second year now, and they're really excited about him. He's actually playing quite a bit now, from what I remember.
Okay.
And he got a sack, I think, the other day, and I was like, oh, hey, look, all right, look, that's the young guy.
Paying dividends,
Look at that, it's
yeah.
paying dividends.
Okay.
So Chris Jones does a lot. I mean, you go back and look at the Giants with Lawrence Taylor. Look, but Lawrence Taylor's the greatest DN ever, right? And even though he played
outside linebacker. Pass rusher.
You put him, you could play linebacker, whatever
You want to call him. He was
whatever
a
he
pass
was.
rusher and-
But he put pressure on that offensive line, which opened up for other men and guys to
Yeah.
get at the quarterback, to cause and wreak havoc. So that's what Chris Jones does. We lost Snead. All right. Snead wanted to get paid. Snead wasn't willing to take a team friendly. And hey, to his own credit, you got to do what you got to do. You got to take care of your family. And I understand that. But you can't he was a little hurt by that. We chose to pay Jones, and rightly so. But
Well, you got the decision of, do we give up a great corner? Do we give up a great defensive lineman? If you had paid Snead, then you'd be saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have given up Chris Jones.
we could have been in the same boat, and Chris Jones goes
Exactly.
to somebody like San Francisco or Cincinnati or Buffalo,
Exactly.
and then we're just ruined the day from there. And Mahomes doesn't like any of us now. Anyways, Snead's gone, and McDuffie is now the number one. McDuffie was the 21st pick 3 years ago.
Okay.
Great cornerback.
Yes.
I would actually say he was better than Snead was last year. Okay, yeah. Snead was good, but Snead wasn't even he wasn't even an All-Pro last year.
He wasn't.
They didn't,
somehow,
and which
yeah.
is shocking.
Yeah.
As good as he played, but McDuffie is the better cornerback.
Trent McDuffie's a darn good cornerback.
He tackles.
There's not really a way around
He's a
that.
for the most part, he's a very sure-handed tackler.
He's very good in coverage. He tackles very well.
In an open field, he tackles well. He's great in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
He's got good instincts. So the one thing I will say that the other cornerbacks really got to step it up, because last year we had Snead and McDuffie on opposite sides. I think Snead traveled with whoever the best
It was
receiver
depends
was.
upon the matchup, but you still have both those guys in the field. Yeah.
You still had them both there. So the other we will need those other guys to step up. I do really like Cook and Justin Reed at the safety positions.
Mm-hmm.
I think they provide leadership. They come out and they play hard. They play fast. They do take some chances, but if you don't take chances, sometimes you don't win.
Right.
You're right. You look at a lot of stuff out there where these teams are winning. They took chances.
Right.
And it paid off because of their instincts and their abilities.
Sometimes one decision like that can
Right.
make the difference.
Okay, another one. Rashid Rice, the emerging of Rashid. You saw a little bit at the beginning of the year last year, his rookie year, but as the season went on, you saw him
Really
get
the
much
second
more.
half of last
Exactly.
year.
You saw him get very comfortable. You saw Mahomes comfortable with him.
Start to trust him a lot more.
Absolutely.
And I'll say this about Rashid. He not only emerged as their best receiver, but if you look at strictly the second half of last year, he was one of the best receivers in the league. Like he really, if you look at just his second half of last year,
Yeah.
he was amongst the better receivers in the NFL.
Yeah. So let's take a look at his stats just for the heck of it, right?
Okay.
All right. So we're just looking at, again, playoffs. We don't care about what happened this season because we're already looking as if we got there. All right. So we had to play in the AFC wild card against Miami in the Freezer Bowl. He was 8 of 12 for 130 and a tutty.
First career playoff game for a rookie.
For a
He
rookie.
catches 8 passes, 130 yards, and a touchdown. Okay.
In the frozen
In
tundra.
the freezing, yeah.
As they would say, as they would say. In the divisional round against Buffalo, he's 4-4, 47, no touch.
Okay.
And kind of it's pedestrian, it's average. Baltimore, 8 of 9, 46. Again, it's
Yeah.
average. His average catch, I believe, his average yard was 5.8 yards per catch. And the divisional round, he was 11.8 per catch. He was.
But I will say he's
longest
catching
25.
almost everything that's thrown to him. He was targeted
Yeah.
4 times, he caught 4 passes. He was targeted 12 times, he caught 8 passes. Targeted 9 times, caught 8
Caught 8
passes.
passes.
So
That's-
he's reliable.
He's got good
He's catching
hands.
it when it comes to him, it
Yeah.
looks like. Yeah.
In the Super Bowl, he was 6 of 8 for 39 yards. Again, 6 of 8. He dropped 2 balls.
Yeah.
Whether that was bad passes by Mahomes or intentionally bad passes by Mahomes, I don't
Just trying
know.
to throw it in
He's
his
trying
direction,
to avoid it
Yeah.
with a defensive
We'd
player
have to
coming
go
on.
back and look at the game. I don't remember.
You'd have
But
to. But my point is you have an emerging receiver, now a second-year player
Yeah.
that is starting to look like a number one.
He's got now a full year playing in that Andy Reid system, playing with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Mahomes, the trust has been built. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and you're seeing and we're not going to, again, we're not talking about what's happening in the season because we're talking about the playoffs because when you win Super Bowls and you're talking about repeating, you got to win in the playoffs.
Literally.
Well,
You don't
literally,
get
you
to
gotta win in the
Super Bowl
playoffs.
if
I mean,
you
that's
don't
not a
win
stupid statement.
You don't even get to the play.
You
to
don't
the
get
Super Bowl
there.
if you don't win the
So
playoffs.
you got an emerging receiver in Rice. All right. Best coach in the NFL, Andy Reid. Is there any arguing with that?
If anyone wants to argue that, I'll listen to it, but that's a hard sell.
Really?
That's a really tough sell if you want to convince me there's a better coach right now.
Like Harbaugh, yeah, I get it, but he's not quite there.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If anybody wants to tell me there's a better coach than Andy Reid right now, I'll hear you out. But that's a heck of a thing to try to convince me of. Like, you look at Andy Reid's longevity, everything he's done, the Super Bowls. Who are you going to tell me right now that's better? We're not talking about Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry. That's another discussion.
Not
But right
Jimmy
now-
Johnson, not
right,
Belichick.
But right now, Is there a better coach than Andy
There's
Reid?
not.
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
don't know who would you put? Who could you say is better than
When
him?
he's over there drawing up plays in the grass, in the dirt, as they say, and Mahomes goes out there and does the
When
little
you got a quarterback that's
running
as
around thing, and then they
innovative as
run up to line.
Mahomes,
Yeah,
and then you
just-
got Andy Reid.
they're playing sandlot football, and they're just messing with your brain.
I mean, they can actually do that.
They need to stay healthy. Obviously, Pacheco broke his leg. Marquise Brown has got a shoulder injury. He's out.
for the season. It looks
We
like.
can only hope that possibly he comes back for the divisional round. Only
best
hope.
case
Best case
outlook,
scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, they have said something about possibly maybe getting back the last couple of games, but I'm like,
That's a
let's be
stretch. I
honest.
mean, let's-
if
yeah.
if I'm the head coach or if I'm Clark Hunt, I'm going to want to have him held out into the first round of the playoffs.
Well, yeah, 'cause you don't want to
when
get
I first
re-injured
came
before
play.
the playoffs.
Right. Why would
Yeah.
you do that? Let's give him a couple more weeks of rest.
Yes.
And then to working out, getting back into shape. Because you know it's going to be difficult when you haven't played because of an injury.
Right.
You're going to be a step slower. You're not going to be quite there
You
when
haven't
you come
been
back.
playing at game speed all
Exactly.
season. Yeah.
So,
And
like, why not
he
get
finished
him back?
last season on the injury reserve.
Absolutely.
So
So,
it's more than a year of him being on injury reserve.
yeah, he's
now.
on the shelf. What do you do?
Right.
All right. Now, here's the thing. Vegas odds right now have the Chiefs at the number one team to repeat.
Really?
Okay? At a plus 450. I don't know about you, but
Huh.
you don't necessarily bet against the house, right? I mean, these guys know what's up. I don't know if that means that this is all scripted and the Chiefs are going to win the next 4 Super Bowls. I don't know, but it's odd that
That's interesting.
no pun intended, but they.
No, but to go against history to that extent,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
I don't think I still have that stats up, but I couldn't tell you who was right after him. My bad on that one. And the other thing is, my last point is Brett Veach, the general manager. He's going to do whatever needs to be done to put this team in the best position with the best roster by the time the trade deadline gets here. He's going to do what's necessary. He's already proven that over the last 4, 5, 6 years. You look what team he's built from all the draft picks.
Yes.
You've got the McDuffie, you've got Karlaftis that were picked in the same draft, the same round.
Oh, I forgot to say
They came around.
Yeah.
McDuffie was in 21. They got Karlaftis on the 30th pick.
Okay.
So they in the same round. So, with that being said, and there are other things that he's done to
Well,
really
you look
add
at the
depth.
past few years. Okay, you mentioned Trent McDuffie, Karlaftis. Also, in that same little span, you trade Tyreek Hill, which some people thought was absolute suicide.
I thought that was nuts. I thought maybe he lost his mind.
Right, but then look at the defense they were able to build
Yes.
because of Tyreek going, and you had the foresight to draft Rashee E. Rice,
Yep.
Isaiah Pacheco. You also now bring over Marquise Brown. You draft Xavier Worthy.
Yep.
You had the foresight to pick up an undrafted free agent like Carson Steele
Mm-hmm.
when nobody else offered him a contract, and now look how they need him with Pacheco's injury. To your point, the guy makes some very good decisions. And everybody will tell you, it's really hard to get on top. It's hard to stay at the top.
Oh, absolutely.
This guy's continuing to put pieces in place
Yeah.
to say, oh, there's the fastest receiver in the league, and I've got Patrick Mahomes. Let me sign him. Oh, Marquise Brown is a free agent. Let me sign him to a 1-year deal.
Yeah, let's see if he can do it for 1 year and let's
He
see what
keeps
happens.
putting pieces together,
Yeah.
like you said, for that sustainability.
And with these guys that are hurt, you don't know what he's going to do later down the line. What happens if Marquise Brown find that sternoclavicle injury, I think is what he's got, and that shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
What if that injury doesn't heal properly?
Right.
What if we get down to right before the trade deadline and he's not healthy? He's not going to make it back. What is he going to make a change for? That doesn't mean he's going to trade Brown and get, A.J.
No.
Brown. I'm not saying that.
That wouldn't be a bad move.
Wouldn't be a bad move for
City.
him. Bad move for Philly.
Goodness gracious, yeah.
But that's, but
But
my
to your
point
point,
is,
there's options.
what other components is he going to trade and say, you know what, we've got additional defensive backs that we could trade over here to get a draft pick or to bring in a guy that's going to help out in, I don't know, the run game. I don't know. Maybe he's going to get an offensive lineman
Right.
for a defensive.
However it turns out, they've got a guy that's looking at these things.
Absolutely.
It's evidence to buy the moves that
Absolutely.
they've
Brett
made.
Veach is in charge, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, I have full faith that he's going to do. The proof is in the pudding of what he's done so far.
Yeah, there's no reason to say he won't.
I mean, he's the one that said that we needed to draft Patrick Mahomes. He was the one that wore Andy Reid
That turned out to be a pretty decent move so far.
Nobody had heard of Patrick Mahomes coming into that draft.
I kind of knew that he played at Texas Tech, but I didn't know much.
Until his name started coming up a lot, and then all of a sudden we jumped up to the 10th spot, I believe, and took him, and everybody's like, who?
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's going, who now?
Unless they're an owl sitting on a branch somewhere.
Right, exactly. So those were 9 reasons that I came up with.
Okay.
For why I think Kansas City will go ahead and run it and get the 3-peat. But like I said, any team can beat any team. For all we know, we could lose to the Raiders, and that could be the game that keeps us out of the playoffs. You just don't know.
Or they could lose to the Raiders in the playoffs.
Or exactly, you lose to the Raiders in the playoffs. I hope that never happens in my lifetime, just because it's the Raiders.
Because you just don't want that to happen.
That's because I don't want that to happen. But you got to stay healthy, and anybody can beat anybody. But I like our chances. I do like our chances.
Well, and you and I've talked about this before. You look at last season. For the majority of the regular season, they did not look like defending Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
But their defense was so good that they kept them at least competitive.
Yeah.
And then what did they do in the playoffs? They just went ahead and won another Super Bowl. Even though all season long they didn't look like they were the team that was going to do it.
Yeah.
What did they do? They still went out and won it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to discount that they could win this year.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll wrap it up. I'm going to ask you some different teams here. I've asked you to give me, on a scale of 1 to 10,
Okay.
what do you think is the threat level of any of these following teams to knock Kansas City out of the playoffs? So I'll start with some AFC teams. The Miami Dolphins.
They don't have Tua. Even with Tua, I'd say a 3. I'm not scared of Miami.
Even with the healthy Tagliabue Ravioli, you're saying 3.
We beat them twice last year.
That's true.
Now, granted, they did have to come to Kansas City and play in negative 19 degrees. I mean, if you're going to be a wuss about that, don't play football. Don't play
you can't
football.
handle that.
If you can't handle that, then why are you playing? Go back to Miami and sit and lay on the beach. But we beat them in Germany
That's true
when
too.
they were healthy.
And they were
steamrolling
yeah.
everybody, and they still lost.
That's true.
So that was a big smack in the face. So
Okay.
I'm not really scared of
They don't
Miami.
concern
They don't
you.
scare me at all.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill, you know what? I bet Tyreek's listening right now, and he's probably mad at me and is going to send me a nasty comment. But hey, look, loved you one of the Chiefs, but no, not anymore.
Is that your favorite player?
No.
anymore?
I didn't draft him. I
noticed.
I wasn't that high up in to get him anyways. But anyways,
No, he was off the board.
yeah, he was
before
gone
one of us
before I
picked,
got to me. Anyways.
All right. So how about the Buffalo Bills?
Buffalo, I would say probably it's got Josh Allen, man, dude. I mean, it's Josh Allen. And they don't have Diggs anymore, but they don't have Gabe Davis either. So that's great.
And the loss of Gabe Davis was something
It's
very
monumental
detrimental
to
Jacksonville's success.
If y'all hadn't figured out, we don't like Gabe Davis either. Him and Drake London. Anyways,
I'm okay with Drake
I'm
London.
not.
Chris
I'm
is
not.
not so.
I would say probably a 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think they're beatable.
I was
It's
thinking
just,
it had, to me, and I want to hear your take, but I would say Buffalo's got to be at least a 5 just because Josh Allen can take over a game.
Oh, absolutely.
He can
Absolutely.
cause-
And I mean,
so
they
there's
beat
a
us.
chance.
They beat us last year in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that was over the line, or receivers over the line game, but I could still kill Tony for doing that. And how do you offsides as a receiver? I don't get that. But let's
You just
move on.
line up offsides, yeah.
Look, you can't discount Josh Allen. Josh Allen's
No,
Josh
he's
Allen.
formidable.
He is a great quarterback. So like I said, at 5, 6, it just kind of
Okay.
depends. I mean, we're always playing them tight. We've got the best of them, but you never know when that coin's going to flip, right?
That's very true.
So, at this point, I'd say 5 or 6.
Okay. The Cincinnati Bengals.
That's another one that's probably a 5 or 6.
Cincinnati does always play Kansas City.
They play
really
them
close.
very tough.
They play them tough.
But I wonder how much of, especially, let's be honest, Cincy is arrogant. A lot of their defensive players have said a lot of things, run their mouths, Burrowhead. Well, that didn't work out so well for them, did it? When you get arrogant and when you get mouthy and you try to get physical, you're going to make mistakes. And we've seen that in the AFC Championship game when they hit Mahomes 4 yards out of bounds. Holy cow. Or 3 yards out of bounds, whatever it was. That was a screw up. And you could say, well, why'd they call that? Well, come on, it's a rule. And you rule.
First of all, why would they not call
him? He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And
even if he's not, that player gets hit out of bounds, that's within the rules right there.
If it had been Dak Prescott, they would have thrown the flag. And he's not anywhere near what we're talking about.
Yeah, anybody.
So they would have thrown. So they meant this year, we beat them by a field goal.
Because of a pass interference.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Bengal fans. He did go through the receiver before the ball got there.
He hit him, but there's no...
You can re-edit the video so it looks like he's not, but
the Bengals had them beat.
Know. The Bengals had them beat, and they made a mistake because they were too aggressive.
If you give Harrison Butker a chance inside the 50-yard line, it's pretty much the closed book.
It's done. It's over with,
Harrison
and that's
Butker's
what
gonna
happened.
Close the game
but I still, with Burrow, you just don't know what Burrow's going to do.
Burrow's healthy and Chase is healthy. They
still have a chance. So 5, 6. I mean, they're kind of like Buffalo. Might be a 7, but it just kind of depends. You don't know what you're going to get.
Gotcha. All right. This next team may not have been considered as much a threat until this past offseason.
Yeah, I know who you're about to say.
The Houston Texans.
Oh, yeah, no. Sorry. I thought my
There's
laptop
another
closed.
team we're going to
there's another one that makes me quake in my boots. I'm not scared of Houston. I'm actually going to go see him play in December. I'm not scared of them. I don't. I mean, look, they got Diggs, big freaking whoop. He didn't do anything when he was with Buffalo, and he had a better quarterback than C.J. Stroud. Look, Stroud may be pretty good, but he's only in his second season, and he's not Josh Allen.
He's very good, but he's still very young.
He's still very young. He's going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm not really scared of them. 3, 4.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking,
Okay.
Miami's at the bottom of the list. Houston would be above
Houston's
it.
barely above Miami
As far as I'm concerned.
Now let's talk about, I think, the biggest threat in the AFC.
Yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, this is the one I thought you were going to go with. And I would say, man, if they're not a 9, they're a 10.
Wow.
Look, you're talking, look, we beat the Ravens by a toe. Let's be honest. Likely, hey, great game, but... Dude, your foot was out of bounds.
It was.
Lamar thinks it was a touchdown. Likely thinks it's a touchdown, and likely you're wrong
because
your foot was out of bounds.
Barely out, but barely still counts.
Exactly. But my point is they have a two-headed monster. We bottled up Derrick Henry that entire game. He didn't have long runs at all. But you know what? That was first game of the season.
Yeah.
First game of the season. So my fear is for him to get going. You're going to have a two-headed monster of trying to figure out how to stop Derrick Henry, who's a, 250?
247, I think, officially.
Yeah. Give or take 3 or 4 pounds, depending on if he ate a cheeseburger for lunch. He
has a double whopper, and he's 250.
I mean, that guy coming running down at you in the fourth quarter, and he's still hitting you.
Yeah, if it's a close game,
I'm probably not gonna. I'm gonna want to lay a hat on him, but I'm probably not gonna like what's about to happen.
Well, even if you hit him hard, it doesn't matter. Like
you got Lamar, who's not gonna hit you. Lamar's gonna outrun you, and he's gonna make you miss.
Yeah.
So you got Derrick Henry physically punishing you. Lamar is going to make you look like a fool.
You're already gassed, and you got to try to catch him.
Now, look, I don't consider Lamar a threat from a quarterback perspective in the throwing. He's not that great of a thrower. He's not. He really isn't. But what makes him dangerous is the running aspect.
Yeah.
And let me back up and say he's okay as a passing.
I don't think he's a better passer
I'm not saying he's Ritter, who played quarterback for Atlanta.
He's not
I'm not
Desmond
saying
Ritter.
that. What I'm saying
His
is
strength is his athleticism and his legs. Yes.
his legs help set up the pass because
Yes.
you got to always take account. You got to close that. You
When
got to
the
keep him.
defense worries about him, that's when Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews can hurt you because they can get open easier. Yeah, 100%.
And I think Aguilar's on that team too, and so
Nelson
that's
Aguilar.
another good receiver that you got to take into account. And if you're keeping him bottled up in that pocket, you may give him the opportunity. If you got your linebackers trying to keep him in the pocket so that you can close in and get him, somebody's open.
And while he's not a Drew Brees level passer, he is good enough to hurt you if the defense does too much of that.
Yes, I'm not
He
worried.
can-
I don't think you got to worry about him going for 380 in the
Not
passing
real
yards.
likely, no.
If he's doing
But he
250,
can pick you apart.
if he's
enough
doing 250 and he's rushing for 120,
then it doesn't matter. Yeah.
holy crap, we're done. We're done. And so
we all know this, but if L'Jarius Sneed doesn't time that punch of the ball perfect
absolutely.
last year,
That ball game's over.
Baltimore might have gone on and won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Isaiah
absolutely.
Likely kept his foot in bounds. That's the last two times these teams have played. Kansas City prevailed.
Yeah.
There's no disputing that.
Yeah.
But it was by inches both times.
Yeah.
One of a punched ball, one of his foot.
Now
out of
you
bounds.
back up and say, and you can look at that game and the Zay Flowers penalty for taunting. That goes back to what I was trying to say about the Bengals.
The
And
Bengals,
I may not have said that properly, but getting that attitude and boy, if he hadn't got the attitude, if he had just dropped the ball and walked away, they would have been in a better position to score. Now I don't remember where that was. It was in the
On the
third
field,
or fourth
exactly,
quarter,
yeah.
and I don't think that had anything to do with the punching. I don't think it was the same drive.
It wasn't the same drive, but
But
still.
I don't think they got what they needed in that drive. Whether it kicked them out, got them out of field goal range, or whether they just got a field goal,
They may
I
have
don't
settled for a
remember.
field
But
goal.
that was a huge play in that
Yeah.
game where he got all arrogant and stood over Sneed and got a penalty on it, and that hosed them in that drive, if I remember correctly. They didn't come away with the points that I was sitting back there going, oh crap, this is not good. And of course, then let's be honest. I mean, sometimes you got to be lucky. And sometimes punching the ball out when a guy's moving.
It's a game of inches.
It's a game of inches, and it's a game of luck. Let's be honest. I know Sneed is going to look at you and go, dude,
I knew what I was doing.
I knew what I was
punch
doing.
That ball
Look,
out.
you were trying to punch the ball
Your
out.
timing was
and that's
perfect, and congratulations.
Yeah, that's
but-
every player in the NFL. It's just luck. Sometimes you get it, and sometimes you don't. And he got it. And those two plays ended it, and they could have definitely been going on and playing in the Super Bowl and maybe winning it.
Well, and they beat San Francisco pretty convincingly on a Christmas Day matchup last year, so they could have done that in the Super Bowl. We don't know.
Yeah.
But to me, I do think they're probably the biggest threat this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Then there's two NFC teams. One maybe a little less threat than the other, but what about the Detroit Lions? The way they emerged last year.
4 or 5.
Okay.
I mean, look,
don't
Detroit's
worry you?
Detroit. No, I'm not afraid of Detroit. They don't scare me.
Okay.
I mean, they beat us. What they'll hang their hat on is we beat you last year. You beat us in the first game of the season.
Right.
If you're hanging your hat on the first game of the season,
Right.
you're a fool.
If that's all you
You're a
have
fool.
to say.
Yeah. First game of the season.
And then their opponents in last year's Super Bowl, which was a heck of a game.
Yes, it was.
Francisco
Second time in a row.
49ers.
Second time against them. That was a
That
great
was a really good matchup.
game. Great game.
So the 49ers, if everyone's healthy, if McCaffrey's back and healthy, Purdy, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, we know Jawan Jennings can go off. We know Jordan Mason can go off. What kind of threat do they pose, do you think?
I would say probably 8.
Yeah, I think they'd have to be pretty high.
8. Yeah, I mean, they have to be high. But the one thing I do have the question about is what's their mental fortitude? Because it's now the second time where weren't they favored in both Super Bowls?
They might have been.
I think they were.
At least one of them.
I think all the
maybe
talking
both.
heads were pulling for them and not KC. I could be wrong, but I think they were. Because I was like, oh, great. They all think they're going to lose. So what chance do we have? Well, let's ring up Batman. Hey, Pat, they don't think you're going to win.
Right.
I got it. And, he's all good. And Kermit the Frog comes out and tears everyone a new one. Look, I wonder how much we're in their head.
There has to be some level of that.
There's got to be some level
Especially
of that.
a pretty young quarterback like Purdy.
Yeah.
He's coming back and saying, but why didn't we win last year?
Yeah.
I know that we could have, but can we now?
I'm not saying that they're going to walk into that game and go quaking in their boots and they're ready to get beat 31-0.
Oh, no.
But there's got to be at some point in time, in some recess of your brain, where something goes wrong and you're like,
why aren't we beating these guys?
well, it's going to be here we go again.
Yeah.
Here we go again. I can't tell you how many times I've seen videos of the play where Kansas City, I think it was 4th down, and they needed a first down in the 4th quarter, and I can't remember the offensive lineman's name, and he's sitting over there, and then he goes, "Watch out for Pat! Don't let Pat! Don't let 1-5! Don't let 1-5 run!" and he pulls it, he hikes it, pulls it out, he runs to the right. And there wasn't even, I don't think there was even a thought that he was going to pass that ball because he went straight up the middle.
Like he had his mind made up.
His mind was made up the second he decided he wasn't going to hand the ball off. And he pulled that ball, and it was a first down. And you have to account for him. And so it's one of those things where when you're the defensive team and you have been played like that multiple times in 2 different Super Bowls, you have to wonder at some point in time, here we go again. What is it going to take
to stop this guy?
Here we go again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doubt creeps into your mind. Hey, now, I look, I hope it doesn't because I want to say if we're going to lose, we lose to the better team. I don't want to lose to a crap team.
Right.
I don't want to lose
That's
the Raiders.
Hard to live with. Yeah.
I don't want to lose the Raiders. But
Gardner Minshew gets going. You got to be careful.
Yeah. Gardner, whatever.
He get to carve y'all up like potting soil, like he's uprooting his carrots in his own garden.
That'd be pretty my luck after I said, whatever. But still, I think San Francisco at 8, Baltimore 9, 10, Detroit 4, the Texans 3 or 4. Definitely the Bengals like a 6. I'd say Buffalo is like a 6. I know I kind of waffled on those, but Miami's like a 2.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I just think there's nothing to be scared of. I mean, Tyreek's the only one that we're worried about. I don't think the run game's going to be that great. We have a good run defense.
That's as I say.
We have a better run
City's
defense
run
than any
defense
defense.
is
bad.
tough enough that.
And Spags is gonna, he's gonna put together a game plan for that team that they're playing against. Mm-hmm. So as they say in Spags, we trust. He's he's probably the best defensive coordinator in the history of the game. And he's done it with multiple teams.
Again, that's hard to argue. Same thing with Andy Reid. Like you can.
He's done it with multiple teams. I think he's won Super Bowls with multiple teams.
I'm pretty sure he has.
And
I'd have to go back and look at that.
They said that on a broadcast, and I don't remember what the broadcast was. It might have been the beginning of the season after he'd done that. And so I thought it was really interesting, and I was like, wow, I didn't think about that he's won multiple Super Bowls with multiple teams.
The same franchise.
Not the same team. So it makes you think, well, he's got to be good at something.
He might know what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
To be doing that.
Exactly. So with all that being said, I think Kansas City's got to.
Feel pretty good about
I'm feeling
the
pretty
chances
good. I feel
that
pretty
we're
good.
See the first 3-peat.
Wouldn't surprise me if we didn't. But I think we have a good chance.
I think they're good enough. It won't surprise me either way because
Right.
anything can happen.
Right.
But they look like a team that you got to take pretty serious going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
Don't overlook this team.
no, don't go chasing waterfalls.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you liked the episode. If you did, please show that by clicking the like button. If you've not already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really will enable me to continue to bring you this type of content as well as many other types of content. So for Kansas City Chiefs fan Chris Black,
Hey-o!
I am Jared Johnson,
Oh!
the Jared J. I hope you'll have a great week and hope I see you again real soon.